Welcome to another episode of Hosted by AI, where history gets a little bit weirder than you ever thought possible. Today we dive into the strange, elaborate, and sometimes downright disturbing world of what happens to popes after they die. Popes can expect to have elaborate, highly ritualized funerals. But it's safe to say none of them ever banked on popping inside their coffin, rotting in plain sight, or even being dug up, dressed up, and put on trial. While popes do have some say in their funeral details, the force of tradition is strong. Most simply follow long-held customs. The pope's body is dressed in the religious garments he wore during life. Then begins a process not many outside the Vatican ever get to see, the layering of 3 coffins. First, the pope is placed in a simple wooden coffin. That goes inside a second, fancier coffin made of zinc, hermetically sealed, with his name and reign engraved into it. Finally, the zinc coffin is placed inside another wooden coffin, and the whole assembly is either tucked beneath a marble slab or sealed inside an entire marble sarcophagus. Quite literally, a fortress of death. Beyond the coffins, the Vatican also observes an ancient mourning ritual, a 9-day period of public grieving, rooted in old Roman customs. Typically, there's a public viewing, and the funeral must take place between the 4th and 6th day after death, though no one's exactly sure why that timing is so strict. After the funeral mass at St. Peter's Basilica, the Pope's coffin is carried out through the ominously named Door of Death for his final internment beneath the church. But death for a pope isn't always final. According to the church, after death, a pope's body may be preserved for possible future veneration. The wording is careful, almost coy, but many interpret this as preparation for relic collection. And relics, as it turns out, are a big spiritual business in the Catholic Church. Relics are believed to connect the faithful directly to the saints, physically, not just spiritually. Relics can be anything. The tongue of St. Anthony, the head of St. Catherine, even bones thought to belong to the very first pope, St. Peter himself. As one believer put it, it's more than just reading about him. It's something that's still physically present, like it's literally his arm. This obsession with relics might help explain some oddities, like when Pope Benedict XVI resigned in 2013 and learned that his organ donor card was no longer valid. Vatican spokesman Federico Lombardi insisted it wasn't about preserving Benedict's remains for relics, but suspicions lingered. And it's not just about preserving popes. Sometimes relics are stolen. After Pope John Paul II was canonized in 2014, a blood-stained piece of his robe from an assassination attempt was stolen. Later, a vial of his blood was taken from its resting place in Spoleto, Italy. People really loved Pope John Paul II, and they really loved Pope John XXIII, too. Known as the Good Pope for his welcoming nature and liberal reforms, John XXIII led the monumental Second Vatican Council that modernized the Catholic Church. He moved the furniture around, so to speak, and allowed Mass to be said in local languages rather than just Latin. His popularity made his future sainthood almost inevitable. And when his tomb was opened in 2001, his body was found in stunningly good condition. It was as if he died yesterday, Cardinal Virgilio Noé said. Was it a miracle? Maybe not. Reports suggest his body was treated with formalin, heavily embalmed, and sealed hermetically inside multiple coffins. He was then displayed in a glass-sided coffin, complete with a wax mask molded from his face just after death. Still, many saw it as a sign of his holiness. Now, embalming practices for popes vary wildly. Some recent popes were fully embalmed, their blood drained and replaced with preservative solutions and dye to maintain a lifelike appearance. But John Paul II, he wasn't fully embalmed. According to the Vatican, his body was merely prepared for public viewing, whatever that means. When John Paul II died in 2005, thousands filed past his body, scrutinizing every detail. Despite some early signs of decay, the Vatican's methods seem to work better for him than for others. Because when things go wrong, they really go wrong. Take the final resting places of popes. You might assume that burial is permanent. Not so. When a pope is the subject of a sainthood investigation, his remains might be moved, sometimes more than once. John Paul II's body was exhumed from St. Peter's crypt and placed in a new chapel once he was beatified. Change is a constant in Vatican traditions, even when it comes to death. The Second Vatican Council in the 1960s ushered in sweeping reforms, modernizing much of church life. But even before that, popes sometimes bucked tradition in their own deaths. Pope Pius X, who died in 1914, famously refused the ancient practice of removing and preserving a pope's internal organs. He thought it grotesque. His body stayed intact, and thankfully, his remains suffered no major damage. Not every pope was so lucky. In 1958, Pius XV's embalming turned into a horror story. His personal doctor, Riccardo Galeazzi Lisi, a man better known for leaking deathbed photos than for medical expertise, tried an ancient embalming method called aromatic osmosis. It involved oils, plastic wraps, and no internal incisions. It failed spectacularly. The Pope's body bloated, rotted, and horrifyingly popped inside his coffin during the funeral. Swiss guards fainted from the stench. His skin turned a ghastly emerald green. It was a disaster that the Vatican would rather everyone forget. But if you think that's the worst thing that ever happened to a pope after death, think again. In 897 CE, the Church held what can only be described as the Cadaver Synod. Pope Stephen VI accused his dead predecessor, Pope Formosus, of crimes against the Church. So Stephen had Formosus' corpse exhumed, dressed in papal robes, propped up on a throne, and put on trial. Unsurprisingly, the dead pope lost. His corpse was thrown into the Tiber River, only to be fished out later and reburied when the political tides turned once again. Speaking of relics and remains, few saints hold the power that St. Peter does. As the first pope and a direct disciple of Jesus, Peter's relics are precious beyond words. In 1939, excavations beneath St. Peter's Basilica uncovered ancient graves and bones near graffiti that read, "Peter is here." In 1968, Pope Paul VI announced that these bones had been identified in a way we consider convincing. But skeptics abound, and the Vatican has never definitively confirmed the identification. When Paul VI himself died in 1978, he too was only lightly embalmed. Sadly, that combined with the Roman summer heat didn't end well. Fans had to be set up around his body to blow away the overwhelming stench, while mourners noticed his skin turning a sickly green-gray color. Death, for popes, is as political, complicated, and sometimes as chaotic as their lives. Tradition runs deep, but decay, science, and scandal have a funny way of showing that even the most sacred bodies are not immune to the passage of time. Thanks for listening to One Host. See you next time, where the stories get stranger the deeper you dig.
Audio Jungle.